second keynote, why and how technology needs to embrace design. I would like to invite the keynote speaker for the session, Dr. Auernhammer, onto stage. Dr. Han is a globally renowned educator, consultant, and researcher in creativity, design, and innovation practice. A research scientist at the Singapore University of Technology Design by MIT and IDC, he leads the organization's Design Research and Practice program. In 2015-16, he was a visiting scholar at the Center for Design Research at Stanford University. Within the last decade, he has helped to design product service systems, business models, and design strategies for high-growth startups and large organizations in the Silicon Valley, Singapore, and Europe. His research focuses on human systems, including startups, SMEs, large organizations, and innovation ecosystems. Dr. Han? Hi. Yeah.
This is working. All right, good morning, everyone. How is everybody? Good. So I'm Jan. Thank you very much for the introduction. That was very kind. I couldn't have had a better speaker before me. I think it was very interesting. I worked for 5 years for Mercedes-Benz, and so this was very interesting to see kind of the design of automobiles and how this kind of moves and how is this happening in India. Basically, I'm from Stuttgart. I'm German. And Mercedes-Benz is just the biggest employer in my region. So it's very obvious that I was working there. And I did my PhD at Mercedes-Benz, trying to figure out how do you come up with an idea? How this idea is communicated in teams? How these teams kind of debate and discuss, reject ideas? And these ideas later on come into prototypes and end up ideally in the car. And interestingly, that a lot of ideas go into prototypes. A lot of good designs go into prototypes, but they do not end up in the market. And that's a very fascinating kind of thing. Give me a second, I'll just open up my... And here's a funny thing. Nowadays, the Windows kind of recognizes you as through the face. Oh, that doesn't look too good. Okay. So a bit about me. There's something wrong with the setup. It's not ideal, but can you see it? More or less? Right, we'll try to fix it. So I'm just recently joined the Singapore University of Technology and Design with the MIT, and I joined the International Design Center. We are based in Boston, and we are based in Singapore. And I just came from Singapore. Before that, I was a visiting scholar at Stanford, with the Center for Design Research, kind of working with Larry Leifer. And so I researched a lot kind of around what is design and how can design change the world. And so my talk will be a bit about what actually is design. And what earlier mentioned was in the talk, what is the difference between an engineer and a designer? And I'll try to make, at least from my point of view, what is that difference? So how do we do design innovation? And you've probably seen this kind of framework, is we always start trying to figure out what are people's needs, because there is the big opportunity. And I think this is no rocket science or anything. It's very kind of obvious. If you figure out what people need, then you design something for it, it just sells better. So by figuring out human needs, we'll then go into technology, what is feasible. We're looking into what is kind of business sustainable, and this is where we look into kind of that is design innovation. So as I mentioned, what is the difference between technology and design? Can you see that? That's an MRI machine. That's a perfect technology for brain scans. The problem with this is that small kids are very afraid of this kind of machine. It is loud. If you've ever been in an MRI machine, this is really kind of noisy. And that is something you, especially as a child, are not really fond of. So one of the things was in a hospital, they figured out, oh, look, children really don't like to use that, and they are so afraid in the machine that they're kind of moving around that the scans are not clear. So they have to do it over and over again. And so the children are really, really afraid, and it's not a good experience for them. That's a technology. Now, what designers do, they create an experience. That is, and if you can see that, unfortunately it's a bit of a kind of bad color, but this is kind of a pirate ship. And so the child comes in and sees, oh wow, there's a pirate ship. And the doctor says, yeah, you have to really quiet because the pirates are coming. And so if we are done, a fish will appear and all is good. And so for the kids, it's a lot of fun. It's the same technology, but there's an experience design around it. That's the difference between, from my point of view, between technology and design. And of course, for that design, you need technology. So design is becoming a competitive advantage. And here's a report. You can look it up. It's called Design in .tech. It's done by John Maeda, and I'm a big fan of John Maeda. I actually screenshot my phone when he started following me on Twitter. So basically in this report, kind of Gartner says 89% of all companies believe that the customer experience will their premium basis for competition. 81% of executive summary places the personal customer experience in their top 3 priorities. And as I mentioned earlier, kind of that customer experience design becoming the differentiator. So it's really about kind of in the digital kind of strategy, it is about a customer experience. And here 6 times more likely if you have a positive emotional experience with your product, with your service, you will recommend it 12 times more forgiving with mistakes. That's that customer retention that is so important. And this is by design. So for me design is not an option anymore. Design is a must. In the older days when we had the VR, kind of the video recorders, and you got this massive booklet to read through, if you design such products, today, no customer will accept that. We expect that kind of the smartphones where we just intuitively know how it works. And that's design. Figuring out what people want. So how do we do this? We go through basically in a very general manner through 3 spaces. The opportunity space, where is the big opportunity we can design something for? The solution space, where do we find that big solution, and how to make it real. So for example, here's an example we do for Changi Airport in Singapore. They're kind of building a new terminal. And so we do some need finding in Singapore in a wider context, understanding what people need. And then we're going into kind of defining the opportunity. And then we go, where are the technology research to generate these breakthrough solutions? And then we kind of prototype them, these human experiences. And then we try to deliver these breakthrough solutions. But it's that human technology integration, that design engineering. And one of the great things we've done at the Singapore University of Technology and Design at MIT is one of the things is the print reader. So if you're blind in a mobile environment, maybe at home there's some help for you to read. But if you are mobile, it's very hard for you to read. So we invented this kind of reader where you can go through and it starts helping you read. And that won actually this year the kind of product award, design award. And here is something around kind of how to figure out these kind of experiences. This was my time at Stanford. This is the robotics group, and I just very quickly try to change to the video. And I really hope, and I'm sorry about this, that the screen is a bit funny. Is it working? It's loading. It worked earlier. This is the kind of thing around technology. It's not well designed. Right. That's very unfortunate. Okay, that's basically you would have seen me in flip-flops and in shorts battling with a couch, a kind of self-moving couch, and I'm trying to kind of move it around. And other things you will see, and I'll send the link out that you can watch it. It's an Economist article. And one of the things is the research group at Stanford, for example, they had the idea around bringing a trash bin. And that trash bin is intelligent and moves along where you eat, so you don't have to kind of walk to the trash bin anymore. The trash bin comes to you. Not a great idea, or? It's a great idea. The problem with that is, as soon as we prototype and test that, what happened was, interviewing the users was around, that feels like a beggar. Give me your trash. And this is the kind of thing you would not figure out. Our ideas work in our heads very well, but we need to prototype them. We need to figure out what is that human experience and how does it work together to really develop that. We very often sit in our kind of committee meetings and say, oh, this is a great idea. Let's put a lot of money in it and go for it. And later on realizing, oh, this is not really the human experience we wanted. I recently flew from San Francisco to Frankfurt. Not going to tell which airline it was. But one of my bags wasn't delivered. And so I looked up, there was a system, I looked up, where's my bag? So it was perfectly delivered on the next day. No question, was flawless. But that system just told me my name, my address, how my bag looked. All I wanted to know as a customer, where is it and when will it be delivered? This system was designed for the internal person who needs to process that, not for the customer. And so for me, this was a terrible experience because I was kind of meeting friends and stuff like that, and I didn't know when to be home to when this is delivered. This is what the problem is. Often, way too often, we kind of have these ideas around we design things for us as a company, not for our user. And same with things is you have to prototype these kind of things. And I'll try to kind of play the video at the end again. Oh, thank you. Now you can see kind of, because it's actually a very funny video. Don't know what I did now. Now it's not reacting anymore. I have to use the pointer? Okay. Okay. So this is the kind of user experience you need to design. And so what does design means for startups and the startup ecosystem? So the startup by design is really, and again, same report, Design in Tech by John Maeda. 36 of all kind of startups that come recently kind of in this funding are designers co-founded. And there's a couple of them. And I'm pretty sure you recognize most of them. And the other thing is 21% of all global unicorns are design and praised. Yeah, you need technology, but nowadays to really start something, you have to embrace design, that user experience. So how do you kind of do that? And this is the same kind of thing. It's very hard to start kind of that startup. Knowing what your customer kind of needs and design for it will help you a lot. So what we do is we figure out what the human needs and kind of prototype it. And this is where the lean startup and design thinking kind of differs. Lean startup often starts with the idea to prototype. We'll step one step back and say, hey, before we have that idea, let's figure out first what is the human need. And then from that prototype, we start then designing the operational system, the business models. And then we bring it into the kind of first pilot, the first flight. And here's some examples. This is from, again, a student project at the Singapore University of Technology and Design. This is a ring, a kind of the early prototypes of that ring. And that ring allows you to use kind of open doors, security doors. And in Boston, you can use that ring to go and do the kind of the subway system. So you can top it up, and you can use it. Rather than having all the time these security cards we all have, it's now your jewelry. I think this is pretty cool. So that is the student project that's now going kind of incorporated and are now going into mass production. So this kind of startup design. Then we have another one which I really like. Come on. Oh, the sound is missing? That's very unfortunate because someone is super excited on that video. Here's the thing. We have a space startup. We're actually working with NASA and kind of trying to go to Mars. And how does this mean? So here's the thing. This was one of the rocket launches in Australia. It's the Gilmour Space company working with us. They have the main research center with us. And so we design stuff for space as a startup. And one of the things is, who saw the movie The Martians? Hand up. Right, great, a lot. That's good, because otherwise it would be difficult for me. Before this movie came out, we had a problem, kind of anticipating what would be the human needs on Mars if we send humans up there. Now, everybody's seen the movie. You know, water is a big problem, right? That's the solution to it. We designed, that is a prototype, that harvesting water on Mars. That's one of the Gilmour technologies. So we solved Matt Damon's problem of harvesting, kind of finding water for his potatoes. That's another thing we do with kind of design technology for startups. And another thing is, not only startups kind of embrace design nowadays. It's going into main organizations. Come on. There you go. So here's the thing. These are companies, and underneath I put all the design companies they bought in the recent years. Why are Accenture buying 4 design companies? Google, 5. Facebook had 2, 4, 5. A Capital One, a bank, buys a design company. IBM. And IBM does it in a big way. I spoke to the IBM guys in Palo Alto. They actually gonna hire by 2020 3,000 designers. Every single strategic team that produces anything has a designer in the team. And they kind of build a design kind of path, career path for them. Because it is that important to IBM to have that user experience, to have that human side, not just the technology. Same for Accenture, same for Deloitte. SAP does it a bit differently. There was an article called The Power of Design in 2004 by Nussbaum, kind of putting IDEO's David Kelly and Tim Brown on the top of the cover. And Hasso Plattner, one of the co-founders of SAP, read that, flew to the Silicon Valley and said, can you bring this design process into software development? David Kelly said, of course we can. And what happened, the Hasso Plattner sponsored the D School at Stanford. The official name is the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design. And so at SAP, every single employee has to go through a design thinking training. Why are all these companies doing that? Because design becomes that differentiator. The design becomes that important to create that human experience. And so here's the thing. This is kind of how Google tries to change their product design. If you think about Facebook in the recent years, around the like button, how the like button changed, that was the design team at Facebook. That was that human experience. Rather than having a like button, you had this interaction of this feeling of being happy, of being funny, of kind of laughing about it, and stuff like that. And it creates a bit more interaction. It creates that bit more human touch in the product. So design in big companies is becoming really important. So even the big consultancies like McKinsey, they bought Luna. Deloitte, somewhere is the Boston Consultancy Group. They all bought a design company. So what I've kind of started is exactly that kind of, how can we design organizations? And they all do this for one reason. And in the product launch of Apple Pay, I find these words by Tim Cook very interesting. Focus on the user experience. We love this kind of problem. This is exactly what Apple does best. Is that focus on the user experience. And the myth around that Apple doesn't do user research and something like that, that's just not true. I spoke to Christopher Island, who had a design ethnographic company, and she said, I got hired many times by Apple. So these myths around Apple that they don't do the user research, not true. But this is why kind of big corporates nowadays buying design companies, getting this design capability in-house, because it is that differentiator. And so for me, I recently, as I said, joined the Singapore University of Technology and Design at the International Design Center. And I'm going to kind of set up the kind of organizational design research program. So we helping organizations to build that capability of design. We help them to kind of develop this design mindset. And we kind of ask the questions around, in terms of research, can we design cultures in the same way we can design products? Because often in organizations, what happens is, oh, in this culture I can't do anything. But we just let culture happen. So can we design that employee experience that makes people more creative, that makes people more productive? Can we design this? And can we iteratively design this? Interestingly, I spoke to someone in Facebook in Mountain View. And so what they did with the new office, it's a massive new office space. They designed the office space in such a way that you walk in and it's like a kind of a flow. And they looked into kind of how people walk and where are the intersections where people meet. So they created the heat maps that where do people meet, coffee places and so on. And so at Facebook, this is designed in such a way that you, when you walk through your desk, you will bump into these intersections and you will meet new people to create that interactive culture. So you can design office spaces, you can design flows around it to create an interactive culture that you meet new people. But you have to consciously design this. So one of the projects we did, and unfortunately there's a bit, again, why is this not working? Pardon? All right. can't start the video. Give me a second. So what we did was we designed, helped design the Prime Minister's office space in Singapore. Can you see? Ah, yeah, okay. So we kind of designed this kind of office space around what are the different versions, design 1, design 2, design 3, and then which then this design was picked. But not only we wanted to kind of, oh, this is how it is, we use VR to kind of let people walk through the office space to figure out where do they look, how do they walk through, what is that human experience in that office. So we use technology to design a better human experience. And so you can see around, like, using VR, where if I would walk to my place, how would this be? Where do I would kind of interact with people? So we can prototype things like that with new technologies in a much better way to create a much better kind of employee environment, where we kind of create interactive cultures, where we can create kind of corners for creativity, where we can do much more stuff than just say, oh, we want an open culture, let's build these open spaces. And there's nothing really happening. And more interestingly, Pamela Heinz from Stanford, she's at the SMNE, she did research around cultures. And she did research in the US, in China, and in India. And she kind of tried to figure out, because often we say these cubicles, office cubicles, they hinder interaction. They hinder interaction in the US, and they hinder interaction in China. Interesting, what she found in India, they facilitated interaction. And you will find that kind of article about that research online. And if not, I'm happy to kind of forward it to you. So here's the thing. Not everything that is kind of, oh, because people somewhere do it in this way, works in this culture. We have to prototype it. We have to figure out, is this design the right one for our context? And so we kind of help organizations design that culture, design design capability, to then be able to kind of create these user experiences. So that's pretty much about me, and I will try again. This is a really cool design from a colleague of mine, Zach. It was a present. Do you know the kind of the sound? How they call the sound? Tibetan, yeah, sound, and this is one, but of course it floats. So this is kind of why kind of design is so becoming so important, and why we need kind of design even for startups. We need design it we need in our large organizations. We need that design capability. I hope this was interesting. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please let me know. And apart from that, I will try to show you very quickly the Stanford video. Thanks. Any thoughts? Over here.
The presentation was very excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think you brought about a point that you can even try to redesign the culture.
Right.
And you gave an anecdote of design of the floor that may encourage people participation and interaction.
Right.
Have you done any experiments on redesigning the culture in terms of the people's behavior, and you were able to influence that?
Right.
Do you think you could throw some light?
Yeah, so actually a colleague of mine, Niraj Sonalka at Stanford, he does a lot of kind of team interactions, and I work with him and are still working with him very closely. So understanding by videotaping kind of the teams, we can see what kind of interaction leads to what results? And this is, of course, in different contexts, is very interesting. So we both kind of went to Germany and saw, I'm German, I can say that. We saw Germans kind of interacting. And of course, very interestingly, and I've never really recognized this in my own culture, but we express problems, and we kind of very quickly say, okay, this is a problem, and then we just, this is the problem, it's your task now. And moving on to the next one. And I was like, that's interesting, because normally what I would expect is like, okay, let's have a creative discussion how we might be able to solve that problem. No, it's a task kind of related kind of culture. And so you see very interestingly how different team interactions or human interactions lead to a certain outcome. And very interestingly, at the Center for Design Research, and they do this now in 35 years, they found out, for example, that if you draw in team interactions, as soon as someone says, oh, you mean something like this, and you start drawing, the team moves suddenly into a very creative space. While writing, it's more on kind of bringing down what we know already onto paper. So different interactions lead to different modes in teams, and stuff like that is super interesting. So we need to kind of more and more figure out what are the right team interactions in cultures and so on that leads to creativity, that leads to productivity and so on. And then we can figure out, oh wow, these teams are really good in this, and they do this, or they do that. And then we kind of can scale this up into an organization and help design facilitators or facilitators, team facilitators, to say, if this happens, maybe you interact or interrupt the team in such a way to help them to move into a kind of a creative phase or something like that. Does this answer the question? Thank you very much. Please.
I have a question here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You next one. Please, you go first.
What are the cost implications of design and redesign? Are there any models available that for this much money you get this?
Right.
Is there any objectivity around there?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a very tough one. Again, I think this goes around the kind of convincing people, and designers are often very frustrated in the sense of, no, we have an idea, just make it nice. And you're like, oh God, no, this is not how we work. We need to figure out first how this, but we don't want to pay for all your research. You're like, yeah, but we'll promise you the outcome will be fundamentally different. We need that kind of research at the beginning to create that nothing is perfect, that really good user experience. So are the models around money? No, not really. I've not seen any. Maybe there are some research going on. I haven't seen any. But often, this is really interesting, and actually what I'm trying to look into is, what is the difference between if we have this old mindset of waterfall model kind of, we have an idea, we have requirements, we hire a lot of engineers, designers and stuff like that, and kind of let them run through, versus we have small teams and let them very quickly find out, iterate, what are the costs and or what are the time to market? And my assumption is, and I don't have yet very good data, but my assumption is that small teams, iterative, A, is less costly, B, helps to figure out what works and what doesn't much faster, and C, I think we're faster to market. Then this is why kind of kids nowadays can sit in their study ballroom and disrupt entire industries. Facebook is started like that. Because these kind of small teams can do things nowadays in different ways. And Joy Ito from the MIT Media Lab has a perfect talk about this. He calls this the world BI and AI, before the internet and after the internet. Before the internet, the world was stable. Information, the cost of information sharing was quite high. After the internet, I can send my information around the world with no costs. I can prototype and kind of build things through coding, through 3D printing. The costs of these are minimized. So we are now able to kind of, in small teams, to do what before the internet only large teams could do. But most large organizations still work on that old model before the internet. And this is why they get disrupted. Sorry.
Asia being the the most emerging the space across the globe,
Absolutely.
what are the best innovation art design that you came across? Would you like to share a few of them?
Okay,
Specific to India, if it have, I would have been like to, I would love to hear from you. What is the design that you really liked in India?
in India, I got the question yesterday, and I was very embarrassed. Because I'm like, this is my first time in India. So this is why I'm like, I can't even kind of give that. Probably after this week now being here, I will be exposed more to it. But unfortunately, I was very embarrassed and like, I can't say it. And I'm really sorry about that. But it's just because this has nothing to do that there's no great designs. It's just my experience hasn't been that kind of exposure.
How about Asia?
Asia, so my favorite design of all times is a Japanese one. It's the Walkman. What? It's not a beautiful design, but this device gave me music everywhere. It wasn't possible for that. And for me, as a small boy, kind of having music everywhere, this is, for me, if you ask me, the best design in the world, it was the Walkman. Nothing else.
What is the percentage of designers are engineers?
I used to think, and this is very interesting, I spoke to Maria Garcia. She founded Hot Designs in the Silicon Valley. And then Facebook bought Hot, and she was the head of product design at Facebook. She's now the vice president for experience design at Autodesk. But she told me in an interview that Mark Zuckerberg said, engineering and design is now on the equal. It's the same importance from engineering to design. They're on the same level. That was Mark Zuckerberg's words. So I think this is where it comes. Google is traditionally an engineering, software engineering company. But even they buying more and more design companies. So we will see that kind of equaling out of business management, engineering, and design to be really becoming equal partners. And I think this is what we need to do, is if now we say, oh, design is the only solution, and we let young designers to lead everything, we're going the wrong way. It's just, all this kind of design movement is to equal out, that we have this kind of business management is traditionally kind of run by kind of managers. So there's a misgap between design and management and even engineering. So we have to really equal out that a board of management is a designer, is an engineer, and is a manager, kind of a business manager.
Hello.
Sorry, in the interest of time, I think
course.
any other questions can be taken offline.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'd like to thank you, Jan,
Thank you very much.
for being here and giving us such an interesting session. We'd like
you.
to invite
Oh, geez.
Shalini
Thank you very
to
much.
give you a
That's so
memento.
nice. Hey, thank you.